Welcome, everyone. I'm Paul Thiebaut III. Today, you'll hear one of the most incredible stories from my role model, Mike Kunda, about what happens when you stay true to your passions. Mike is the founder and owner of the Yo Philly Rocky Film Tour in Philadelphia. To start things off, I'd like to share the purpose of this interview. So as a passion coach, or also known as an intrinsic motivation coach, I work with high schoolers and young adults to discover passions they can turn into careers. My service is based on research and professional and personal experience that shows when careers are based on what people are intrinsically motivated by, they use their talents more often, as Mike definitely does. They experience higher levels of purpose and meaning, as Mike definitely does, and they are more successful, as Mike definitely does. Or is. But for a number of reasons, though, including a lack of encouragement and guidance, not enough youth believe their passions can become careers. And that's why I'm so excited to have Mike Kunda with us today. Mike is what I call a passionate professional, meaning he turned his passion into a career he loves and is successful at. So what does Mike do? Well, it all started in 1979 in Scranton, Pennsylvania, when Mike was 11 years old. He was sitting in front of the TV watching the Rocky movie for the first time when, out of nowhere, he was struck with a surge of energy and excitement unlike anything he says he had experienced. At that moment, something in Mike turned on, a deep connection to what he was watching. And from that day forward, Mike began to become the Rocky movie character. Then, 30 years later in 2010, after accumulating more than 30,000 hours of practice, one of the most seemingly improbable things happened. Mike started a Rocky movie tour company in Philadelphia where the movie was filmed. Today, he is the founder and owner of the Yo Philly Rocky Film Tour, a top-rated tour company that attracts people from all over the world, including me this summer. Mike's story represents what's possible when youth don't give up on their passions, even if their passion, like Mike's, is to be the movie character Rocky. So Mike, to get started, I wanted to actually play the trailer of The Pretender, the documentary about your life. And
sure.
Awesome. And when it finishes, I wanted to ask you who Rocky is and why you're so passionate about him.
You got it.
Awesome. Let me do the screen share. Okay, here we go.
My mother, she would say to me, what are you going to do with yourself, Michael? What are you going to do? There's nothing that just hit me that I wanted to do. I wanted to be Rocky. That's what I wanted to be. We'd have our conversations at night. She'd go, Mike, how are we going to get this kid to realize he's got to get his education? We kept saying, he's going to put money together. He's going to go to college and he's going to do all this stuff. I did try. I had like 25 or 30 jobs.
Sometimes we don't know where Rocky ends and Mike begins.
Nothing ever held my focus.
I was afraid that he was taking so many shots from everybody. He was becoming better at his fantasy.
When you go home at the end of the day, can you live with yourself? Did you do the best that you could? And that's the message I got when I was a kid. And most days I didn't. Most days I was so aggravated and frustrated with myself. But when it comes to this, I feel like I could do anything.
Okay, let me come back to you, Mike. Give me a second there. There we are. Yeah, Mike. So who is Rocky and why are you so passionate about him?
For me, Rocky's always been that whisper in your ear that you can keep moving forward. When I played high school football poorly, I was third string. He was the last player on the bench with me saying, it's okay. You're here. You've made the team. That's something. I think Rocky is a concerto of, I think, muscle and dignity. I think it's courage and love. Rocky, it makes you want to achieve. For me, Rocky is the purest form of passion I had ever seen in my life up to that point. Why Rocky? Why not Luke Skywalker or Indiana Jones? Nothing wrong with those heroes. They're great, but there was something about the character of Rocky, his solitariness, his loneliness. Now, I come from a very good family. My mother and father, very encouraging, very loving, great parents. But there was something in my DNA, insecurities just took root very, very early, and I couldn't shake them. And I saw that Rocky had these very comparable insecurities. By the end of the movie, I've just witnessed, hey, if Rocky could do it, maybe I could do it. Rocky went in against Apollo Creed. He didn't have all the tools. He had the stick-to-itiveness, he had the perseverance, but he didn't have the skill set that he needed to beat Apollo. Well, what could he do? Well, he could be standing at the end of the fight. That was something that hadn't been done yet in the universe with Apollo Creed. He'd been knocking out opponents left and right. So I said, wow, how could that be in my own life? Well, maybe I'm not going to make the honor roll or the honor society in school, but maybe I could start passing tests. Maybe I could start studying. Maybe I could do something versus what I hadn't been doing because I was a poor student. So for me, I would say I saw Rocky's and my insecurities in Rocky.
That is that's fascinating. And I wanted to kind of go a little bit deeper on that with asking, what's it like for you to be Rocky, and what are some of the ways that you've lived them out, like watching the movie 600 times, or building a gym in your basement, or getting a perm,
right?
Or,
a perm. When I was a kid, I didn't have a tremendous amount of friends. I had other people that I knew that were on the fringe of social society like I was. What I had done, I started wearing the costume from Rocky. In other words, Rocky had a gray sweatshirt with Italian Stallion written on grease pencil on the back of it. I would wear that to school. And at the time, in the 70s, the teachers would, they were not as compassionate or as easygoing as they are today. Back then, the teachers could slap you, kick you, humiliate you. And I guess my big mouth was shooting off in class. And so they took me to the front of the class and said they spun me around to the class and said, "What's wrong with Kunda sweatshirt?" And no one knew. And the teacher proceeded to inform me and the class that it was the wrong spelling of Italian Stallion. So I said, okay. But yet it was beginning this suit of armor for me. After I saw Rocky, my grandfather, I was 13 years old. My grandfather called me up to his house after a schoolyard bully. I lost a fight there. And he gave me his black fedora and black leather jacket. And anyone who knows the character of Rocky, specifically Rocky 1 and 2, he has this fedora, dark fedora and leather jacket. And I've always felt that this would be my suit of armor. If I could lose myself under the hat, I could hide in there and put the collar up and cinch up my jacket. I would walk around. So that was one version of it. And the one thing I would add, I added to it as the days and weeks had gone by. I don't know if you remember the old Walkmans.
Oh yeah, I used to rock that when I was a break dancer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. The old Sony Walkman, and I would walk around the back streets of West Scranton, and I would tilt the headset underneath my hat so I could put the hat on, and I had audio recorded the movie Rocky when it was on television. So I would listen to a few lines, stop it, and then I would say, "Yo, Paulie, your sister's with me. I'll call you back later." And then I'd do Paulie's lines and Gazzo's and Mickey's, and I kept reiterating it over and over and over and over, and it would just build this little foundation. Wasn't much, but it gave me enough just to get up in the morning and go to school the next day. I hated school. I couldn't stand any of the people I went to school with. I didn't fit in. You know, they were all told what to do. They were all marching in single file. You know, they were being led down a path of more traditional learning or career routes, and that was never going to be me. You mentioned a perm.
Yeah.
There was a time in 10th grade where I was born. This is my hair is natural now. This is how my hair is. But when I was in 10th grade, my hair was literally poker straight. Like the worst head of hair you couldn't have had. I had cowlicks all over. And Stallone has this incredible thick hair of dark, wavy. It's like a pompadour. I got to get that. If I'm going to be this character, I need that hair. But yeah, I'm not a genetic scientist. I couldn't change my DNA. So what could I do? Well, I went to the barber whose name was Ray Surge, and I said, what are you going to do? So he sits me down. He curls my hair with a curling iron, and he goes, let's do this. Let's do that. And it was close to what I have now. And I go, oh my God, this is amazing. He goes, okay, now this is going to only last until you go home and you'll wash it out in the shower. He goes, but if you want to do something, we'll give you a perm. What's a perm? Well, we have these little rollers here. And he goes, I said, rollers, my hair, like a girl? Nope. And so I fought the idea briefly, and then I surrendered to it. I said, okay, this is what I have to do to attain my brain, my goal of being Rocky, because I was very delusional back then. I thought I really could be Rocky, but I'm sure we're going to touch on that in a little bit. So I get a perm, and all of a sudden my hair is wavy, and I'm like, wow. Now I could style it, some hair gel. Now I'm getting a Stallone look to it. But I'm only in 10th grade, so I'm perfecting the Rocky snarl, versus just normal. But it was difficult because back then I hadn't understood the subtlety of what it is to do a Stallone impression or the essence. At the time I was going, yo, Adrian. I looked like I was stroking out. I looked foolish. I looked like every drunk guy in a bar who tried to come up to me and ever in the future and tell me, hey, you think you do Rocky? I do right. Hey, yo, come on over here. Come on. No, you sound like a mental patient. Okay. No, I said, so, but then I would learn, of course, as time went on, but these little reenacting the scenes 3, 4, 5 times a night, pretending my hairbrush and my underarm deodorant, pretending they were Cuff and Link. And I would talk to them, early in the morning, or drinking the raw eggs and going for a run before school in the morning. These were the things I lived daily because I knew if I practiced long and hard enough, it would get me somewhere. Maybe that answers your question a little, I think.
It does. And neuroscience backs that up. And psychology backs that up. It's really life is what you think it. So by putting yourself into the shoes, so to speak, of the Rocky character, the hair of the Rocky character, looking at your environment as opportunities to practice and interact, really, it showed you kind of an alternative reality. It lets your dad mentioned you getting better and better at living out your fantasy. And I would say you getting better and better at turning a fantasy into a reality.
But at the time, nobody saw it that way, including me. Nobody. I mean, the amount of mocking and beatings, harassment, forget about trying to get a girlfriend, throw that out, because that was non-existent. The thing was, for me, I wanted to be accepted in school. I think we all want to be accepted at that young age. That's a big deal. Looking back at high school now, it doesn't mean anything. It means nothing. As the older you get, you're so far removed from the political cliques of high school. So, but at the time, it's very important. It's all you know. It's really the only thing you know. If your parents have done a good job and if they've protected you from the ugliness of the world, then maybe high school or middle school is the worst part so far. So, there are worse things out there.
And actually that talking about parents. So how did your parents support your passion for Rocky? And what were some of the challenges that they faced doing so?
So they supported it by just being positive. It was a very simple thing that I saw. To them, it wasn't so simple because they saw me week after week, month after month, delving more into Rocky, becoming deeper into this fantasy world. But I didn't stay there. I was able to come out of it and I, do my chores around the house and interact with people in it. And although it was 24/7 Rocky in here, I did wall it off a little bit throughout the day if I needed to be Mikey, Kunda, or whatever, and do my deal. And it was okay. But they were just supportive. They never mocked me or made fun of me or made me feel like it was stupid or a waste of time. Which, to be honest, at the time, a lot of people legitimately thought it was a waste of time. And I understand that because this is a very weird, wacky thing I want it to be. The improbability of being Rocky. Just think about that. If somebody said they wanted to become Don Corleone, I'd say, yep, that makes sense. You want to run the mob. I don't know if it's going to happen, but at least that's a legitimate job. Well, it's not a legitimate job. It's an illegitimate job, but it's a job. Okay, that exists, right?
Pays the bills.
It pays the bills.
Intermittently, maybe, but yeah.
Right, exactly. Even if you wanted to be Quint, the shark killer from Jaws. Now, you couldn't be him, but what could you do? Maybe you run fishing tours out on the ocean. Maybe you become some type of shark's doctor or something. That you could do something with that. But Rocky, you want to become Rocky. Rocky, not a guy who becomes a boxer. Not that. Not a guy who becomes an actor. All right. Not that. You want to be Rocky. And what was the qualification? What was the goal in being Rocky? Wearing the hat and coat, walking around Philadelphia, promoting Rocky to get paid for it. That was the extent of what I wanted to do as Rocky. That is mentally irregular, as Rocky would say. At 13, 14?
Yeah. It's I mean, I think you just said it all. But yet, Mike, despite all of that, you've been going for 40 years. So in other words, what gave you the determination not to give up on a passion that so many people, including yourself, thought was irrational, impractical, and would never lead anywhere?
Lack of choices, not believing in myself, and insecurities. That really was the cocktail that kept me coming back to Rocky, because Rocky was always my North Star. As corny, as cliche as that may be, as people watching right now may say, Rocky and North Star. You know what, guy? I'm not seeing it. That's okay, because I saw it at the time. I was like the only one that saw it at the time, but that's what I saw. My insecurities rage. To this day, I'm going to be 54 years old. To this day, insecurities still rage. But the lessons I learned, and you can't discount my parents either. They are very constant through my life, through all the fork in the road moments, okay, the changes and so on. They're always there. They're the undercurrent of nurturing and development. And I know we're probably going to talk about that later, but I'll say it now and I'm going to say it later. Parents should always listen to their children. You should always check your children's toolbox, their mental toolbox. What is their natural inclination in life? Do they like to argue? Maybe set them towards, help them realize what a lawyer does. Do they like to build blocks or something? Maybe they'll get into construction. So that is very, very important. But Rocky, the reason I stay with Rocky was a square peg, round hole. I was a square peg going into a round hole. I never fit in. I just couldn't fit in on the edge, and I was always being pushed out. Maybe because I was so odd. And I would watch Rocky. Now here's a man who was strong, muscular, tough. He took the hat and the coat off, and he had this teddy bear heart. He wanted to help people. He wanted to help a girl stop smoking and drinking and cursing on the corner. He wanted to help his friend Paulie, who was very negative. He even extends a gracious hand to Mickey to be his trainer after Mickey humiliates him in front of the gym. So I thought, my God, this character is being yelled at by everyone in the first half of the movie. Yet the second half, when he could say, no, I want nothing to do with you, what does Rocky do? Rocky takes the higher road and goes, you know what? Come on along my journey. If I can help you, Come on along. And I recognized that. I said, wow, what a great way if we could all live our lives that way. It's not always practical. I understand that. But if that's the goal, if that's what you shoot for, if that's what you try to really attain, then maybe more days than not, you'll come close to hitting that. And that's really the thing with Rocky for me.
Being true to yourself, not.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you Mike, you said when we first spoke, you said that one of the like differences that between you and a lot of your peers in high school was that while they were off doing things, dating, hanging out, partying, you were practicing being Rocky. And so what was that like, being kind of the outcast, being off doing something that so many people couldn't relate with?
You know, I wrote some thoughts down here, and I'm looking over them now. And the one I have in big letters, lonely, under that question. It's very, very lonely. Never fitting in. Decisions were always based out of fear. I had zero interest in school. For me, I got to a point where I stopped having that need for the acceptance in school because I was never going to get it. It was never going to come. So I said, okay, I'm too strange to fit in. So what can I do? Well, I can just go my own way. I really can. And when you come to that realization, it's very freeing. And you say, okay, they're going to laugh at me no matter what I do. No matter what, I'm goofy. And so, okay, I can't stop them from laughing. Well, what can I do? I can keep pursuing the thing that inspires me. What is that flame that flickers 24/7? What is that thing? Oh, it's this Rocky thing. Well, let's start doing more of that. Let's go to the university. My grandfather was a janitor at a local university, and I had learned from spending during the week. I'd go to school. I'd go to work with him. And I would spend time in the University of Scranton's library, and I would look through old microfilm of old interviews Stallone gave early in his career. And I'm talking in the mid 70s, like when Rocky first came out. And I would read these because there was no internet. There was no access to any back issues to read. You couldn't just go on Google and Google New York Times interview 1977, Sylvester Stallone. So I had begun doing a lot of that type of research in libraries because I wasn't going anywhere else. I wasn't going to football games at that point. I did go because I only played football for like one season. And in my senior year, I did go to one or two games. Like I walked over with this one guy I knew, but didn't last long because I discovered girls, and girls liked a guy with money so he could have a car. So I quit doing everything with the exception of Rocky, and I got a job at a grocery store so I could afford money for a very ugly car. I'm digressing anyways. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, well, you mentioned lonely. And I think you kind of answered this, but I think most people would cave in under in a situation where they feel lonely and they feel so on the outside of how everything is normally going, especially in high school, and would find some way to emulate or to copycat or to try to fit in. But this is like, it's ironic. You were lonely, but then what you did was to stick out even more by sticking to your passion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were lonely, but you stayed true still to doing something that I think most people would have become too peer pressured, too worried and gave in and said, I'm going to give up on this. Like,
well, also, I got to tell you too, Paul, my father, he plays a role at my mother too, obviously, but I happen to be born into two people that genuinely loved and respected each other. My father, he got a bum rap early in life. He was only able to go to school until 9th grade. His mother died, so he had to drop out, and he had to work with my grandfather, who was a tailor. That's how my father learned to become a master tailor, but they don't make a lot of money. Anyways, my father growing up as a kid loved Davy Crockett, and he would emulate Davy Crockett around the house with putting old blankets over the banister on the back porch, pretending it was a horse, tying a jump rope around a pole as reins, and the Santa Ana army coming over, and so on and so on. He made his house to be the Alamo. And he would tell me and my brother these stories. And I as he's telling me, I'd be laying in bed, go to bed, whatever. And as I drift off, I go, Dad had this crazy imagination, but he did okay. He got married. He met someone. He's having a family. He's got a roof over his head, paying the bills. I don't know. Maybe I could, maybe I should keep following my dreams, or my passion, as it were. And, again, teachers had a hard time relating to me. Teachers really weren't very supportive at all to me.
And so in a real way, you had family to look to provide you with that inner sense of security that, hey, even if I'm still lonely and an outsider at school, that's okay, because I'm Mike Kunda, AKA I'm Rocky, and that's who I'm going to be. That's who I'm going to be. Yeah. I really, it's a weird thing, because I knew I could never be Rocky, but that's what I wanted to be. But I knew it was irrational. It was an impossibility. It was not going to happen, because I never wanted to get punched. I never wanted to hit. I got into schoolyard fights, and I hated it. I hated being pushed around and bullied. And I always operated out of fear. And that's the thing that held me back the most, fear. My parents could only help me so much. At some point, when you're 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, fear, if it takes hold of you early and you don't know in your mind to say, wait a minute, fear's my friend. I'm gonna be best buddies with fear. Fear's okay. I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna fail. I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna fail. And at some point, I'm probably going to have a win at some point. I don't know where, but I will. And I did. But it's difficult. Like when you have a high school guidance counselor telling you, sit with me. So we're going to sit for 10 minutes and we're going to talk to all the graduating seniors. And I'm dressed as Rocky in this guidance counselor's office. I've got the fedora, the jacket on, my grandfather's hat and coat, and I'm affecting a Rocky-esque voice, mouth, whatever. And he goes, what do you want to do with yourself when you graduate? Now, mind you, my grade was like a D+, C-. I mean, I was just a horrible student. And he goes, you want to go to college? You want to go to community college? You want to go to the military? What do you want to do? I said, well, I want to be Rocky. And he goes, oh, you want to be a professional boxer? I go, no, I tried that, and that didn't work out too well. So, and he goes, oh, you want to be an actor like Stallone? I go, no, not really. Well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to wear the hat and coat and walk around Philly, get paid to promote Rocky. He goes, get out of my office. You're mocking me here, and I'm trying to help you. And so he called my mother, and my mother was like, no, you don't understand. My kid really believes he wants to be Rocky. He's probably going to get a job at a warehouse or somewhere. And that's probably where he's going to go. So she reassured him that I wasn't really, being a jerk to him. He asked me a question. Well, what was I being authentic? Yeah. I was being authentic, but what was I going to do? I'll tell you, Paul, I was never more afraid in my life than my senior year in high school, because all my peers, my classmates, they were all walking around like they had a motor on their backside, like they knew where they were going, whether it was the military or college or the family business or a trade school, something. They had purpose. They knew what they wanted. I knew what I wanted, but there was no Rocky school. Okay. There was no pathway to get there. None. And I said, what am I going to do? I'm never going to meet a girl. You got to have a job. You got to buy girls nice things. I mean, the stereotypical things that a lot of guys have, but a lot of other guys became electricians, power linemen, whatever. And I just bummed around from job to job for 10 years and probably 20, 30 jobs in 10 years. I was a police officer at one point. Well, and I was going to ask you, well, if you were a high school counselor, and someone walked in and told you what you told that high school counselor, in retrospect, what would you tell a student who told you they wanted to be Rocky, not an actor, not a boxer, but Rocky?
Am I me on a second career after my tours in Rocky, or has the Rocky tours never happened with me? Because that's how I can answer the question.
I would say whichever feels natural, but I would say today. if you went
All
into
right,
the
so
role of a high school counselor?
all right,
You
let's
met
say
a-
let's say I sell my business, right? And I
Okay.
take all the lessons I've learned from Rocky with me. And some crazy reason I want to go and be like some type of a counselor, a part-time counselor to kids. And they're able to come to me and talk to me. Oh, I tell them nothing is improbable. Nothing. Anything you set your mind to, you could do some form of it. Like if a kid would come to me and say, I'm thinking I want to be a power forward for the Philadelphia 76ers. And we talk about things. Then I would follow up with some reality as well. I would say, well, listen, if you only grow to be 5'6", probably aren't going to make the team. But what can you do? Maybe you develop the greatest pair of sneakers. Maybe you're the team, maybe you write new plays. Maybe you're the team doctor. Maybe you have a drill so great that no team could be without it. You sell your knowledge. You spend the next 30 years of your life learning how to be the best at it. So you aren't a power forward, but you are part of the team in some manner. That's why I always tell parents, check your children's toolboxes. Pay attention what goes in that toolbox as they grow and develop over the years. It's very, very interesting because kids don't always know what's in their own toolbox because they want to meet girls and sports and they're stressed out about testing and so on. And I think it's the job as parents to really say, I don't know, little Johnny's got, I don't know, he's going this way, but he's got nothing. We think he's going to fall flat. And I'm not even saying to discourage him from falling flat. Sometimes falling flat early on is good. It was for me. I'm living proof falling flat and failing is one way. I don't necessarily recommend it, but it works.
I mean, well, I got to ask this question. I know Sue and you. I know you both don't have kids, but if you did, Mike, how would you support your children's passions?
I would spend time with them. I would just spend, like, the phones would stay home. There would be no, it would just be out a walk it would be some father son, father daughter bonding time for me, my view. And I would do that throughout their young lives. I really would. And I would really be checking in. I would be very, very present. Even if it meant the job I was doing didn't allow me to be present. I would change the job. Whatever that would mean, because I believe knowing where your children stand as they grow and develop, because what was an interest a month ago may no longer be. So to know where they are is very, very proactive, I think. And then I think giving them opportunities. There was a time where I was starting to go down a road of wanting to be a boxer. I am not the boxing type. My father, Larry Holmes, at the time was a 1982 heavyweight champion of the world. For 7 years, he was one of the greatest champions of all time, and he got his professional start in Scranton. There was a man no longer alive. He was a fight promoter. He also ran the Howard Johnsons in DuPont, Avoca, Pennsylvania, and he would always come in for tuxedos at my father's store. And they would have a lot of conversations, and Lou knew Larry. And Lou said, why don't you bring the kid down? Bring your kid down Saturday morning. I'll have the champ call on the phone, and maybe the three of us, we can give your son. No one ever discouraged me. But what they did, they gave me the information I needed to make a much healthier choice. And when I sat there were all these boxing pictures on the wall of these men with broken nose, cauliflowered ears, eyes heavy with the scar tissue. And you're looking at it, and they're all holding the fist up that's how boxers greet each other. How you doing? And they all had that under Lou's chin. And Lou just talked to me. And he the first question he'd asked me was, Michael, have you ever been punched in the face? And I go, not really. I mean, pushed around, slapped around, kicked, but not punched me. He goes, okay. He goes, and then he went down a whole litany of things. Near the end of his 12-minute speech to me of what I could expect, Larry Holmes calls. And the first thing he says to me, he puts it on speakerphone. He goes, "Hello, Mike." He goes, "Listen, you want to be a boxer? You got to make a bum drunk before you mug him." And I look at my father. My father goes, "I don't know." And Lou goes, "I don't know." Years later, I had another conversation. We had interviewed Larry for The Pretender. We interviewed Larry for 2 hours. We went out to his bar in Easton, and he didn't make the movie, unfortunately. But I had told him what he said to me, and he actually remembered it. He goes, "I remember." He goes, "It was a Saturday. You were in Lou Del Vecchio's office." He goes, "I do remember it." He goes, "That meant you got to work a boxer. You just can't go into a ring, hit a guy once, and the guy goes out and you win. It doesn't work that way. This guy is going to try to take your head off. So you got to train, and then you got to work real hard in the gym, unless you get in the ring, unless you get a lucky punch, which that doesn't happen." So they had really opened up my eyes, and that's just a parent listening deeply and not dismissing it. You know, oh, you want to be an astronaut? You can't be an astronaut. Come on, you're, you have half a brain. You cannot be an astronaut. But if you believe in your children, if you truly want the best, then I think you go to whatever lengths you need to go to give your children that best information that they can make a most logical choice from. I continued making severely illogical choices, but I was on a road with one trip, one way. That was it.
You mentioned in the documentary the dark years, right?
Yeah.
So what did that teach you about your passion for Rocky and about life? What are the dark years, and what did that teach you?
When you have to, corporate retail is a very difficult place to work. I definitely could never go back there. You're only as good as yesterday's sales in corporate retail. And I had worked my way up. I became a general manager and an optician, and I had done okay for a guy with no college education. But there are a bizarre set of rules, emails, voicemails, meetings, co-meetings, and then you have to go through all of that with 3 separate bosses, which was a daily or a weekly occurring event. And if any of your associates wouldn't pull the numbers, you either wrote them up or you fired them. And many times it was near the holidays, or it was, it was around kids' birthdays or people getting sick. And when you're the boss, you have to take on this responsibility. And it makes you feel just ugly. Like, how important? We made a sale of $700, but you wanted $780. That was like the goal. Each associate had to do a sale of X amount of dollars. But they came very close to that goal. The company was like, "Nope, got to write them up." They didn't do it. Got to write them up. And that's just the tip of the iceberg here. But you have people with severe agendas. You had people with egos that were just raging out of control. And I'm not an egocentric guy. I'm really not. And I had a very hard time. I clashed with these people, and I didn't realize you couldn't tell these people off. And then I got fired in 2008 when the American economy really hits the skids pretty badly. And there were firings all over. Millions of people were out of work. They were losing their houses. It was crazy time. And that whole time, the bitterness and the aggravation and stress I felt was being reduced by Rocky, because I couldn't watch Rocky as much. I couldn't emulate the character. I had this professional job. I was responsible for like a $2.5 or $3 million business. So I had to really be focused. And Rocky, Fantasyland wasn't working as well as I was hoping it would work. Because I couldn't drop down to Fantasyland. So I put Rocky away for a few years, but not really. I would walk the dog. I would have the fedora and the jacket on. And I would just walk the dog around the neighborhood, and I would talk to I had an English Mastiff named Butkus. And that's, of course, Rocky's dog was Butkus. And so I would just have these conversations with Butkus. I would play Rocky for an hour while I go walking with the dog, and I come back home and back to reality. But that character, that mindset, that taking the higher road always resonated so profoundly with me.
And my dad, he had some good advice to give me years back, which is, if you're going to go to college, just take one course at the very minimum, take one every semester, just so it's there.
Yeah.
And that sounds kind of the way that happened for you. You
Yeah.
kind of kept Rocky, you kept him there.
Yes.
You didn't fully put him away so that, at some point you could bring him all the way back out of the drawer as you did to go on to start a tour company.
You're right, Paul. The one thing I firmly believe, our dreams come to us all the time in our subconscious, and they beg us, don't quit us. Don't. I believe our dreams, our passions, they are what light the way in our dreams many, many, many times. If you could just maybe in the distance up on a hill, the dream, it's like on a cane with a white flowing beard, and it just waves, I'm still here. No matter how old that dream gets, it is still your dream. You can still access it, which is why I tell people all the time, if your dream when you were 22 years old was to open up a sandwich cart at the courthouse to make money lunch, okay? Or if you live in you want to have a sandwich cart at a football stadium. But now you're 45 years old, you've got kids and you need health insurance or whatever. But if you can find a way to have that dream hot dog cart at a stadium, you should do that. If you're dreaming about this, to this day, I have dreams about Rocky Land and being in a Rocky parade, sitting in like a convertible, right? I'm sitting as like this grand marshal, go right down the street in front of Mickey's gym, waving to people. And it's the silliest dream, but I still have this because I really feel I'm Sylvester Stallone called me an ambassador to Rocky Land. And that's what he told me. He's how he sees me. And I mean, you can't get a better compliment than that.
No, I think the only better would be Sue, your wife, who said part of the marriage contract was to watch the Rocky movie with you 200 times. So how did you get so lucky, and what role has she played in supporting your Rocky passion?
So in 1988, I realized Rocky wasn't helping me get a girlfriend. So for a short time, I took a short break from Rocky, and I had hung it up in the closet for a little bit. And I had seen Rambo 3, where Rambo has the long hair. And I remember I'm having perms at this time. So I said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to grow my hair very long. Girls are going to definitely love this. And it just made things worse. So now it's September of 89. I'm working in an auto parts warehouse with a friend of mine. And he says, come on, let's go to Burger King for lunch. So he had this 4-door 72 Plymouth Volare. The color was like a vomit yellow and rust. And like no girl would ever want to be seen in a car with a guy like this. Okay. So we're sitting there eating our burgers or whatever. And this gorgeous carload of girls pull up alongside my buddy. And they're giggling and talking. And I'm just rolling my eyes. And I'm like, oh, this is stupid. These girls are going to, go my buddy. I'm not going to meet any. But that's okay. It was one disaster after another. And then my buddy said, Mike, this is my cousin Sue. Sue, this is my best friend Mike. And as she leaned back and I leaned forward, so we saw each other. It's like, what does Rocky say to Paulie? It fills gaps, she's got gaps, I got gaps. Together we fill gaps, Cupid slammed an arrow into us. So, and we knew we knew we were there for each other in that moment. So two nights later, I work up the courage. I call her, I ask her to go to this little greasy spoon. And I thought I would be a big man. You've seen the movies, Paul, where the guy takes on the leadership and he says, she'll have a steak, lobster, and a martini. Well, I didn't have money for any of that. So I wasn't trying to be debonair or leading man material. I only had so much money and I didn't want her to know I only had so much money. So I said, we'll have 2 BLTs and a soda. So she loved it, right? So we're sitting there. Now, we were there maybe 6 hours talking. I never had 6 minutes with a girl at this point. And halfway through, I said to her, well, yeah, I hope you don't mind me asking, but why did you okay a date with me? And she goes, oh, your hair. I go, my hair? She goes, yeah. First Blood's one of my favorite movies of all time. I go, oh, okay. So I met my wife via one of Sly's characters, okay? Because I felt Rocky was, it's crazy. So then I said, yeah.
That's what all those years of loneliness, they paid off, man.
It did. It really, really did. And so Then shortly after that, we started hanging out like crazy and started dating and then got married. And we've been together like 33, going on 34 years this September. So,
Yeah, congrats.
thank you. But you never know where it's going to happen. Life is all timing. It isn't so much a luck thing. I mean, I have my own definition of luck, but life is timing. It can be a car accident. It can be pulling up the right lottery ticket at the right moment when it's being generated. You were the one that got it. It was timing. It wasn't luck. I know a lot of people take a mystical view of it, but there really isn't any such thing as luck. Luck doesn't exist. It's all timing. That's it. It's timing.
Well, and speaking of timing, you wrote a book, Mike, and you've said on a number of occasions, you're not that smart of a guy, but
no,
dude, you wrote a book and you wrote a valuable book. So
anybody could write a book. Trust me.
Most people don't.
Yeah, they choose not to, but you see, they could. And that's the difference. I believe I have met so many people doing my tours. I don't know how many tours I've done. I can ballpark it around 27, 2,800, 3,000 tours, somewhere in that ballpark. And everybody's got a story. It may not be a long story, but everybody's got a great story. And I really wish people would write it. I wish there was a website that people could go to and just write their story, or write it and then upload it to it. Here's my story, because the human condition is resilient and amazing and beautiful. And I think more people, I wish they would take stock of that. But yes, I wrote a book called Cue the Rocky Music. It's a memoir about my life, Rocky related. It starts as a kid, and the initial, a thing people don't know about me, this is not something I talk about. You're one of the few people I talk about it. The original way I got into Rocky was not, my father mentioned it after a schoolyard tussle that went wrong. He wanted me to maybe pick up some boxing skills watching this boxing movie, but it was before that. When I was 2 and 3 years old, every night before bed, my mother would read me this book, and I'm actually looking at it right now on my shelf. It's called Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Richard Bach. And it's about this seagull that wants to fly higher, farther, and faster than any other seagull. But the seagull community, the elders in the seagull community, tell Jonathan Livingston Seagull, no, your job is not to be the best. Your job is to fly low and pick up with your beak the scraps of food the boats toss in the water, and you must bring them back to Seagull Island. This is what your job is. Do not try to step out of that.
This is your fate. Yeah.
Right. This is your fate. And that's one of the things, my mother read it to me over and over and over as a kid. And I felt and he ends up being the best of the best. And then he goes on to train seagulls to step out of the mold and move on. Don't listen to what people tell you. If you want to be the bird that picks up the stuff off the ocean, all the more power to you. Nothing wrong with that. But if you want to be different, if you want to do your own thing, then don't listen to anybody else. You do you, as people say nowadays. And that really was the catalyst for me. But a lot of people don't know that about me.
Yeah. And that, Mike, that actually, like, so there's so many kids. That makes me think of all these kids that are out there who don't have parents that support their passions. So like, why should a parent support their child's passions to begin with? And what advice would you give kids whose parents don't support their passions, whose parents didn't give them those experiences that you just described that were life-changing for you?
Parents got to look down the road 60 years when they're old and infirm. Who's going to take care of you? Now, if you don't take care of your kids early on, they're going to grow up to be bums. Maybe they're going to have no money. Maybe they're going to be living in a one-room apartment and they can't take care of themselves. So when you get sick, as most of us will, the older we get, you draw out the timeline. You want your kids to be there. Hey, I changed your diapers 1,000 times. You got to change mine now. Okay. So that's one thing. Honestly, my father and mother always told my brother and I, they just wanted us to be more successful than they were. That was their hope for us. Now, the one thing I didn't mention, and it ties into this, one of the things that was very hard for my parents to watch as I was going down this rocky road was my lack of education. My mother begged, pleaded, and hoped I would go to college and get an education. She says it in the documentary. She said it to me all the time growing up and as a young adult. And yet she never discouraged me from this rocky thing, not once. But she goes, why don't you maybe get something like a backup just in case? Boats have a dinghy, right? I had no dinghy because I am the dinghy. So I felt bad for a while that I didn't get my education, but in the end, it looks like I got a different type of education, School of Hard Knocks, and I was able to apply that in a way. And I think parents, if you love your children, again, it goes back to spending quality time with them. And it doesn't have to be 24/7, and it doesn't even have to be like 5 hours. Check in with your kids, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, just have a check-in. Put the cell phones down, forget about watching binge TV, just talk to the kid. Maybe you got to be a little secretive about getting them to talk to you. I know I didn't want to talk to my parents when I was 15. I didn't want to be seen with my parents. But when I turned 22, 23, and I was a police officer, I couldn't wait to, if Sue was working that particular night, I'd go over to my parents' house, have dinner, and I'd take them out shopping or whatever. I was attached to their hips because they were so wise and they really saw everything. Even if they were unsure, they went by their instinct, and their instinct was to just be nurturing. And for no other reason, you just never know. My mother could never have predicted reading Jonathan Livingston Seagull would give me the career I have today.
Yeah, that's deep. That's deep,
Yeah.
Mike.
It's the truth. That's how it all went down.
Well, you also know this so well. Some students are passionate about what's taught in school, but many aren't. You would fit that bill. I think you would agree. So how can schools, kind of moving from parents, how can schools do a better job of supporting students whose passions aren't school, aren't being taught in the classrooms day to day in school, aren't offered in the curriculum at school?
First thing I would tell them is to hire a passion coach. That's number one. The second thing, you gotta, maybe even first, I think the first thing you gotta do is find teachers with passion. A lot of teachers are in it for the benefits. And I mean, I know the pay isn't the greatest pay in the world, but there is good health benefits. That's a big thing. That's one of the things I wanted to say about Sue earlier. That's one of her sacrifices she makes for me. She has been in retail for 20 plus years, maybe 30 years. And, there's been good companies and crappy companies she's worked for. But the one thing they all had was health benefits. The one thing I don't have is health insurance. I don't have that. So I have to get it through my wife. And she knows what this means to me, what my rocky world means to me. So she has sacrificed other jobs that were better jobs, but the health insurance wasn't as good. So she sacrificed there to stay. Now, she wouldn't have sacrificed if I wasn't making money at what I'm doing. That's the other thing. Believe me, my parents, anyone around me who was in my life, if I wasn't making money, believe me, I wouldn't be 54 years old running around Philadelphia just as Rocky. I'd be working in a factory, in a warehouse, a cubicle, an Uber driver, a Walmart greeter, a Lowe's, a Home Depot. I would be working probably 3 jobs. But the fact that my passion has paid off in a career, my wife said, well, makes good money. So, okay, my thing will be the insurance. But I got to keep the tours up. I got to keep them fresh and inventive. And you get people coming back 2 and 3 times for a tour. It's like, oh my God, I'm going to take them around the same things. It's very stressful. But, I'm rarely at a loss for words. And I have a lot of stories, time I've spent with Sylvester Stallone, and the stories he shared with me, my time on the set of the Rocky and the Creed movies. So I'm never at a loss for words. I can always come up with something. But I think that's the thing. I wrote that down earlier. I wrote down teachers with passion, hire passion coaches, the arts department. This is something that I think gets overlooked in schools. You know, the arts department, school is so, when I went, it was very traditional. Home economics, social studies, trigonometry, geometry, English 1, English 2, Latin. When's the last time you had a need to speak Latin? That's the classes I had to take when I was in high school in the 80s. Spanish, I took Spanish and French. I ain't going to ever go to France, but Spanish probably would have been good, but I don't remember any of it. So it doesn't matter. It was just wasted time as far as I was concerned.
Wow.
And trigonometry, when is the last time you learned you used trigonometry in your life? I never learned use trig. Hardly ever. I don't know. For me, I wish there was a way that students, even though they're young, and yes, they got to get the basic history, they got to get the basic arithmetic and the basic spelling. Okay. But maybe there's a way children and their parents or guardians can choose off a menu, like when you go to a restaurant, and you could tailor your curriculum. But at the other side of that, I know it's a little difficult because they're so young, but maybe there's an aptitude test. I don't know if they have them. I assume they do have aptitude tests, but even when you take an aptitude test, it doesn't mean you don't get to pick a menagerie of classes. You know what I mean? You only have so many classes you can take. So maybe like in Philadelphia, there's the School of the Arts. I pass it twice a day on my tours. And it's where the Boys to Men went to school. The Road, which is South Broad Street in Philadelphia, that section of South Broad Street is named Boys to Men Avenue. So again, giving children choices, more opportunities, that to me is something schools could take a lesson in.
And Mike, we're getting down to the end of our conversation here, so I just got a couple more questions for you,
Sure.
Which kind of goes to the choice. So you have 40 years staying committed to your passion. 40 years, man. I don't know many people on the planet that can say they have stayed true to a passion, to something that fills them with purpose and meaning, that gives them a sense of identity, a sense of meaningfulness, a calling, if you will. After all those years, do you have any advice that you'd give to youth about pursuing their passions in general or specifically?
One major word: perseverance. Perseverance is where it's at. You can't go to Google, you can't go to Amazon and order a jar of perseverance pills. Take them and persevere. You can't. You have to do it through sacrifice and pain and humiliation and failure. And then you might learn, if you're smart, you'll learn a little something from that. And then on your next opportunity, you're going to fail with humiliation again. You're going to crash and burn. And you have to accept that. You say, you know what? Here I am, world. I'm going to fail huge in front of everyone. That's okay, because I'm going to get back up. I'm going to dust myself off. I'm going to keep moving forward, because that's what it is. That's how you attain. That's how you get closer to your purpose. It's not easy to find your purpose in life. I didn't get my purpose until I was about 38. I didn't realize wanting to be Rocky was a purpose that would lead into the tours, that would lead into people coming from around the world to bond with this character, a bucket list thing that you just can't see it then, but there is some, you can't speak it. There's no word for it. There's just something, some X factor that's there. I think you have to eat, sleep, drink your passion. You cannot just, you got to work at it. And that's really what my definition of luck is. I hate when people say luck, because there is no luck. Luck to me is opportunity and practice. So timing and practice. What have you worked at? If you're a football player, if you're a golfer, if you're going to dental school, whatever it is, you work, and you dedicate yourself to this, whatever that dedication entails. And then you get an opportunity. So you got your practice and it T-bones with opportunity and timing. And that's it. Are you prepared? Are you ready? Because really, at the end of the day, all you can really ask for is to be given a chance to fail on your terms. So that's it. Don't just look at me and judge me and say, I don't know, guy looks like an idiot. I mean, I don't think we're going to hire him. Talk to me first. Give me a shot at the interview. Don't dismiss me. Now, if I screw up, if I don't have the qualifications, well, then you should get rid of me. Then that's on me. I did not do my due diligence. I failed myself. Okay, I'll learn from that, and then I'll come back. That happened to me 30, 40 times in front of a lot of people. And you just, okay, boy. And then when people start ragging on you, you could just say to yourself, let's see your failures. I'm up here failing in front of 4,000 people on stage. What are you doing? Nah, you're sitting in a cubicle answering phones. I don't know. I mean, it's just perseverance. I could talk for hours on perseverance.
Amen. And following what your North Star, following something that maybe isn't popular or isn't like culturally what you're supposed to be doing.
Or traditional,
right? But it feels to you natural.
Exactly.
And to let it to go where that takes you. And Mike, that brings me to my final question, because I've taught more than 2,000 students how to pursue their passions. And so persistence, purpose, or failure, learning from mistakes. These are without a doubt single-handedly, you'll never become successful through your passions if you're not willing to persevere and to fail and to learn and to see failure as an opportunity to learn. But I also know for a fact that no one can successfully pursue their passions without the support and the encouragement of others. This idea of this lone genius, that's a myth. That doesn't exist.
Total myth.
Right?
We're not an island. I'm telling you, it takes a village to help people become successful. It really, really does. People don't think about it. You don't, if the most minute things that you take for granted, like paved roads, like having the roads cleared. So I do my tours 12 months a year. All right. And we get a lot of snow here in Philly. So when it snows, I've got a family that booked a tour 10 months earlier from Australia. They already flew into Philadelphia 2 days earlier before the snow hit. And I got to give a tour. So I got to take my hat off to the snowplow driver who just cleared the road for me to get there. We don't think about that. It's all the little things in between. It takes a village to make us successful. Now, you can have that village and do nothing with it. Your own insecurities can take hold. If you don't commit to it, if you don't persevere, you don't train, and then that's just someone else is going to take advantage of that and they'll become successful. So that's it, my friend. I mean, it's just no magic pill.
So then as my last question, Mike, would you like to acknowledge any person or people who've helped you along the way and without whom Rocky might only still be a character in a movie?
Everyone that helped me on my journey, and it was plentiful, they all get acknowledged and talked about deeply in my book, Cue the Rocky Music. My grandfather, my parents go right through. So that's what goes without saying. I'm going to kind of go quickly in chronological order. Then it was my grandfather. Then it was my grandfather. My brother gave me a great connection with humor. My brother was just as supportive, and I don't talk about that support as often because mom, dad, wife, and so on. But my brother, he was always pretty supportive as well. Then it goes to complete strangers that owed me nothing. They just were so genuine and kind. When people tell me that, we're sometimes the human nature can be very ugly and aggressive. It can also be incredibly giving and beautiful and gracious. So my friends at the Victor Cafe, Greg and Alexa DeStefano, they own that. They were huge in it. Their handyman, jack of all trades, Steve, the manager back at the time, Rhea, I would have to say friends of mine at the Laurel Hill Cemetery, where there's some filming locations up there, and just anybody who bought my book. I really want to thank them, because that gives me, when I feel insecure, I say to myself, my God, these people bought the book and they liked it. Maybe there's something there. Maybe I shouldn't be so hard on myself, you know?
We're gonna put the book, the name of the, oh, good, perfect, yeah, the book in the chat here for anyone. Mike, thank you. That has been a pleasure, an honor, really, to be able to talk with you today and hear some of your thoughts surrounding your passions and the pursuit of them, and what you've went through and how you've grown as a result of it. And I wanted to say to everyone out there, you know, Mike's journey pursuing his passion wasn't easy. It required it required a lot of hard work, continuous skill development, failures, mistakes, and yeah, I think you pointed it out, Mike, dogged persistence. You know, after practicing for 30,000 hours, being Rocky and developing more than 40 professional skills in the process, including writing a book, it comes as no surprise that Mike developed and equipped himself with the expertise needed to start his tour company. And my hope is that all youth have the same opportunity as Mike to develop their passions into purposeful and successful careers. And that's why I coach youth in pursuing their passions, so that they can become as fulfilled in their careers as Mike, no matter what their passion. So Mike, thanks for taking the time to talk with me and share your story. You are truly an inspiration to me and to youth. And I wish you the best in your ongoing support of your passion and the success of your tour company.
Thank you.
Yeah, and to anyone that wants to learn more about Mike's tour or documentary or book, go ahead and click on the link that we just put into the chat, and you can find links there. And if you're actually watching this video, the recorded video, check out the links in the description. And finally, never forget to be what you love, people. Never forget to be what you love.
Exactly. Always keep punching. Never give up.
Thank you, Mike. It's an honor. It's a pleasure.
Thank you, my friend. I'm going to go get myself a cup of water, and it's past my bedtime. That's the other thing, kids. It's important to get sleep, okay? It's very, very, very important to get your beauty sleep, because some of us, not probably most of you, but me, I need about 12 hours of sleep so I can function in the morning. So anyways, guys, thanks so much for having me on. I am going to go, and I wish you all the best, my friend.
Thank you, Mr. Rocky Kunda.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Later. Bye.